Welcome to the Rocky Mountain MS Center's webinar series, Maximizing Lifelong Brain Health and MS. Today's topic is a unique perspective, young adults living with MS. We would like to thank the pharmaceutical companies who have provided patient education grants to support this series. Thank you to Genentech, AbbVie, Biogen, and Genzyme. This webinar is scheduled for 1 hour and will be a slightly different experience from some of our other webinars. We'll be having a moderated discussion for the first 45 minutes and then leave about 15 minutes at the end for your questions. You can submit questions at any time by typing them into the chat window on your screen. We will answer as many questions as time allows. We will be archiving this webinar along with the slides on our website at www.mscenter.org, so you can replay it at any time. My name is Kelsey Lance, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Rocky Mountain MS Center. I'm joined by Pete Broderick, our Marketing and Communications Manager.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And 3 members from our MS Young Professionals Network. This group meets monthly for networking, education, volunteer, and fundraising opportunities. And now I'll hand it over the microphone to our 3 presenters for their own introductions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Collier. I'm from Denver, Colorado. Moved around a bit in my life, but I'm 34 years old, and I've had MS since it would seem to be about 2007.
Hi, everyone. This is Reece Garcia. I'm also from Denver, Colorado. I currently work for a national nonprofit in cancer patient education and research. I enjoy running, snowboarding, traveling, and yoga, and was diagnosed back in 2015.
And I'm Edward Hutt. Born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I'm currently a structural engineer working for Martin Consulting Engineers. They're out here, headquartered in Lakewood. Diagnosed about 2.5 years ago. Going on 3, and I'm involved in a bunch of different nonprofits and life-staying active.
Excellent. So before we get started, we'd like to know, if you're watching this webinar live, what is your connection to MS? Do you have MS, do you care for someone with MS, or are a healthcare professional? You can just go ahead and click your screen. Got some results coming in here. Excellent. It looks like we are split pretty evenly between folks with MS and caregivers, as well as healthcare professionals in there. Wonderful. So as we move through the webinar today, we're going to talk about these different topics. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar. Just put them into your chat screen. Let's get started with talking about diagnosis.
Great, this is Andrew. I'll start with where it all began. My first symptoms started in 2007, and my journey to being diagnosed eventually in February of 2014, obviously over a period of years. My first episode was right out of college. Basically just went into the doctor, urgent care, with numbness and tingling in my face, and ironically they gave me prednisone to just kind of knock that down, and I went on with life. And then later in 2011, I was in grad school, and I basically went into a doctor for double vision. I just woke up one morning, driving to work, and could really only see straight out of one eye or the other eye, but the 2 eyes weren't working together. And that took a few months to heal, and it did on its own, and that's kind of what the doctor said, that the nerves would heal slowly on their own. And then again in 2014, I had numbness and tingling. It was worse this time, and it was a primary care physician that basically sent me to get an MRI because I had told him about these earlier episodes, and then I was sent to Rocky Mountain MS Center for diagnosis.
Yeah, I was diagnosed back in it was like December 2015, January 2016. I was in grad school at the time, finishing up a master's degree, and I was super stressed, super sick. Kind of some of those triggers that they say can affect relapses, and that's kind of when I experienced some numbness on the right side of my body and tingling as well. So I was kind of one night just studying for some finals, and it just kind of hit. I had the whole right side of, I guess not the whole right side, but like from the ear down on the right side of my body, I kind of just went through some numbness, and that's when kind of it just led to everything leading up to diagnosis. So, and then as far as like symptoms before then, I don't really know if I had much. Like there was a stint where I thought I maybe had like a pinched back nerve, and I thought I had maybe like hurt it like working out, but it, I had some like slight foot numbness that I thought maybe was attributed to like a pinched nerve, but now looking back at it, it was like, oh, maybe that was, some early signs of MS. So.
And I feel like we kind of have similar diagnosis stories.
Yeah.
One of the first symptoms I had, and it was in college, as I was approaching graduation. It was my senior year, right before taking finals, and the right side of my body also went numb. And it wasn't from my ear down, but it was probably from like my shoulder down to my torso, and then my leg. And I noticed that while getting dressed one morning that I was pulling up my shorts and I couldn't feel my right leg. And so that's what initially caused me some concern. So I went to the doctor, just a little concern. Hadn't experienced that to date. And at the time, she didn't think it was anything, maybe just a pinched nerve.
Right, totally.
And so then I went and got an MRI, and within 2 hours of my MRI, I had a diagnosis of MS. And it's kind of funny because after that occurred, looking back, I realized that one of the symptoms I had been experiencing since I was 13 years old, which I later found out was layer myth, was something that is MS related, and I didn't know it at the time, but since I was 13 years old, I had been experiencing symptoms of MS, and then once I had the diagnosis, I was able to put 2 and 2 together and realize that it had been going on much longer than I thought. So that's kind of how I got diagnosed and figured that out. I also had some weird foot burning. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, but it was like
burning how?
Like if I had the need to like itch my foot on the carpet all the time and just like it was on fire, and that kind of came along with like the numbness. But that's what prompted me to get in. And to date, I've had minimal symptoms, relatively manageable.
Yeah.
I've definitely described nerve pain as hot or burning, and like then if I get something like some sort of treatment that helps it cool it down.
Really
Burning as much, but it wasn't on my feet. Thankfully, I haven't had many symptoms really down low. It's all kind of up in my face, eyes, ribs.
That's interesting.
Well, let's see. I guess we can talk about what's different about being diagnosed today.
Definitely.
Definitely a lot, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it's crazy to think about now. Everything we know, if you were diagnosed or you didn't have these symptoms back in the 70s, 60s, 50s, how much different that kind of.
Well, and it's safer nowadays than back then, right? Like back then, they used to do some weird
Spinal
things.
taps.
Like, well, I think they still do spinal taps, but like back then, they used to like throw people in like hot water, just like hot tubs, and see what would happen to them. Yeah, because you know how like people get like heat sensitive.
Yeah.
So they used to like throw people in like a hot tub essentially and see if they like go numb. But that's just like obviously they don't do that anymore.
Right.
So, which is good, which is a lot better. So I mean, the medical profession has advanced a lot with it, right? And so, diagnosis nowadays is hopefully quicker and safer with like MRI technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably like the biggest boon to our condition,
Right.
right?
I think perception has changed a lot too. So
Yeah.
I had 2 great aunts that were diagnosed with MS back in the probably 70s, and so what they experienced is nothing compared to what I'm experiencing currently, and I think that perception is starting to shift, that it's not this death sentence where you're throwing people in hot water to see, if they have MS, but rather it's now a chronic illness that's manageable, and it still affects everyone differently, but I think there is a shift in public perception about what this disease is and how it affects people.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I had that initial perception when I was first diagnosed. I was just like, look, this is the type of disease that elderly women get or something, and it's totally wrong, but yeah, that's part of it is there's just all this information. A lot of it's not the best thing to be reading when you're given this news first, it could be old or just people's stories that were on older treatments that are available now, things like that. Like, read about stabbing yourself in the leg every day for certain medicines, and other ones pills. And, then when my doctor told me it was like it's only once every so often, it's not as bad as what some of the stuff you read about.
Yeah, no, totally. I would agree with all that. Yeah, I think I had, when I first got it, I had people similar to be like, oh yeah, like my grandpa has it. Like, oh, how's he doing? He's like, oh, bedridden. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, like, initially you hear a lot of that. It's super scary, right? But then you get into it, and I think you see where we're at in 2018, and you see that things are way better, right? Like, just from a management standpoint, from a medical standpoint, like, pharmaceutical companies are doing great, like, continuing to do, like, research into this and, like, helping us be, like, still productive, like, members of society, right? So.
Well, I think it's interesting you both bring up the age thing, because before I was diagnosed with MS, I had that vision of elderly woman in my head, and I think that's, it's a common perception, but since being diagnosed, I've met more young adults being diagnosed with MS than I would have ever thought beforehand. So I think a lot of that is, can affect anyone at any age, and I think the most prevalent diagnosis age is between 20 and 40. So it isn't just a disease for older individuals. It does affect everyone of all ages, and now they're even showing that there's children that are being diagnosed. So I think there's a lot that's changed, but there's a lot of treatment and
a lot of
things.
Stuff just went misattributed in the past, probably.
Right.
They didn't know what it was, undiagnosed, or it's something else.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess another thing too. So, just like relationships with MS. I would say being diagnosed today is different, and it's actually probably also affected like how we have relationships with people, right? Because back then, maybe someone had MS and being in a relationship or having those relationships is harder because they're going to need to be taken care of more, right? Whereas like nowadays we can manage it better. Yeah, so I guess we can talk about relationships a bit.
I had a lot of people, when they found out in my family, so sending me little articles or things that they read online, or like, oh, I read about this diet, stuff like that. How did your family react? I think they just wanted to help. They're just like, holy crap, this is scary, but they jump online, start reading, and like, oh, this sounds great, or I read about this medication, or like, I heard about like stem cell research.
Yeah, right.
I get that.
Northwestern, so people kind of.
Well, I think family wants to help as much as they can, and I don't know, Edward, if you've had the articles coming at you, and I do get them a lot, like you do, Andrew, but I think family just wants to help, and it's one way to help is when you see a new drug come to market, or when the most recent MS drug came to market, I got like 3 different articles from it in the span of an hour. So I think that's one way to show it, but I think just asking how you're doing and checking in is another way that my family does show support, and it doesn't feel overbearing. It doesn't feel like, every single time I see them, like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? But having some sort of reminder that you have this support system in your family and your friends is reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had the same thing as well. So getting those articles, half of them are like helpful, and the other half are like, okay, well, I wish that was true, right? Like
I wish yoga cured my MS.
Yeah, right. So no, I think, with my
I wish I had the willpower to follow that diet.
Yeah, no, I guess how I guess how has my family relationships changed since I got MS? I guess my family members, they care more, right? And they're also more worried, I would say. You know, like they are, like, for example, like sometimes they just like don't want to tell me something that's going on, just so I don't stress out, right? And they're like, hey, you have enough on your plate, you don't need anything more. And a lot of times I appreciate that, but at the same time too, it's like, hey, I'm still here, like I still want to be a part of what's going on. So I think that's changed. I think, and granted, right, like they're just looking out for us, so they want what's best for us, and they're trying to not overbear us with as much as we already have going on. But I would say that's changed a bit. And then just you got people that'll, some of my family members are like, oh, you gotta try this, you gotta try that, you gotta try this, and I'm like, yeah, but it's just not there yet, you know, like the data's not there.
Are any of them more open with you about their own health issues, or now that they know that you're dealing with this thing long term?
Yeah, I think I would say so. I think it's like,
I've seen that for some.
I think it's like awoken some of my family members up to like understanding that health is important and that, you know, it's a fragile thing and constantly got to be on top of it, right? And so it's actually like I've gone through a bunch of like diet changes with my health, and that's starting to like rub off on my family now, right? So now like my mom's trying to like eat better, and my dad's like paying attention to what he's eating, and so I think it's actually good for them, right, too, but yeah, some of that.
Silver lining.
Yeah, right.
Get them a little healthier.
So.
That's funny you mentioned the change in your family because I have definitely seen that with my parents.
Yeah.
They've gone from, you know, eating just whatever is easiest to make to actually being mindful of the food choices they're making and then other lifestyle choices as well. So exercising and making sure they're taking care of themselves while they, you know, are able to. My dad's actually going to ride in a bike ride with me this summer because he has the ability to. He's physically able to. So it's cool to see these changes. I was wondering if you guys ever noticed that, like, your family and friends forget. So, yes, they're checking in all the time. They're sending you these articles, but have you ever experienced, like, friends or family who completely forget you have MS and maybe not forget in the sense that they don't know you have it, but they forget in the sense that, like,
It limits.
Yeah, and that they forget to check in or, you know, do you ever, they turn a blind eye? Do you ever?
Yeah, I get that. I think when I'm doing well, like you said, they kind of just forget, right? Because you get those, you know, it's the invisible disease, right? So I think a lot of times when I'm healthy and they got things going on, they forget, right? And then I got to remind them, like, hey, you know, I'm not feeling good today. I'm a little tired, or, you know, I've had a rough day today. Like, I got to call it quits early today.
Like, oh, I was drinking last night.
Yeah.
Like, not quite.
No, actually, I just read a book. So,
wild night.
yeah, no, I would say I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, I've noticed, you know, like with any family, right, like you get into arguments occasionally and things come up. And I've run into some situations where, like, I'm having a disagreement with my family or something, and I have to remind them and be like, hey, you know, like, is this really important? Like, because I don't need this extra stress, right? Like, let's remember what's going on here behind the scenes, right? Like, this isn't good for my health, or I think I just need to remind them that it's like, hey, we want to be upset about something, but, like, is this important? You know,
enough priorities for me.
Yeah, this is how we want to spend our time, right? And I think that's something that I've, like, tried to, like, remind my family as well, that it's like, hey, let's not argue about things that are small.
Right.
You know, let's focus on the big things. Let's try to keep moving forward and try not to get bogged down in those little things. So.
And I think that at the end of the day creates a healthier relationship in those relationships, you know, because you're spending less time on petty, small things and more time just focusing on what you have and the support you have.
Yeah.
You're not trying to throw it in their face or anything, but you're just trying to be like a gentle reminder, you know, that this is going on behind the scenes, like you said.
Yeah, no, that's true. It is.
I forget sometimes, for myself, I overdo something.
Yeah. Here, let's move on to maybe like relationships with like significant others. Do you want to start off, Andrew?
Sure. It's always kind of in the back of your head when it comes to relationships and what's going on in the other person's mind around this sort of thing, and so much uncertainty about the future, and you don't really know what tomorrow, let alone 2, 3, 5 years down the road, may hold in a lot of different ways, because it's such a complex disease and it's so much different, in everyone. So, I mean, I had already had a pretty serious committed relationship with my wife, and then we had moved together halfway across the country, and we weren't married yet, but then I was diagnosed, and we'd been together a long time, and it was really scary for both of us. I know she was scared. And then when it came time to ask her to marry me, I was pretty sure, but there was always that little voice in the back of my head, I don't know, it's too uncertain, or I don't want to have kids, and I don't really want to take that chance that they may have MS, and they are older or whenever. So, it's just trying to talk with her and let her know what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling insecure, or for this reason or that reason. And it's usually internal more, because I'm dealing with either physical thing or emotional or cognitive, or I'm just really tired or stressed, and just kind of communicating.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot that goes on in your mind, right? Like you touched on some of those things, like the kids thing and the just like the future. And so I'm in a relationship now, and in the beginning for me it was pretty hard, right? With like a lot of the same concerns that we were having. Just like, what does the future hold? What does that mean? Like, I don't know if really want to be like a burden on somebody. Like, you get a lot of those thoughts that just kind of come up from all of it, and they're not the right thoughts, obviously, but I think when you're first diagnosed, a lot of that like nags at you, right? And you're just like, well, what's the right decision here?
You have to give it effort to keep your thoughts balanced, I feel like, because obviously the negative type thought train already, you're thinking about disease and symptoms, so you gotta be like, well, there is that chance that, we could grow old together and the disease dies down and later in age a lot of times, and like, our kids will be totally fine because it's a pretty small probability, even though it's a little higher. So
I think
balance
we're both,
it,
Right, yeah, and you and I, we're both lucky that we have someone that like supports us with it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, we've gotten lucky in the sense that we got someone that's like willing to go through it with us through thick and thin, and I think that helps a lot as well, right?
So my wife was through it all, the diagnosis. She wasn't my wife yet, but she was in the room with the doctor, with the official, looking at the MRI and everything. So there wasn't that having to tell someone kind of from fresh, like, oh, you got to know me.
Which is different. We have a different experience than Reese, obviously.
Were you in a relationship when you found out you had MS? Did you say that?
Yeah. So
So
my girlfriend at the time was living out in Boston.
Okay, that's right.
And so then she ended up coming back like a year later, and since then, like, we've been together. So
you never had to disclose.
No, we haven't had to have the rough conversation.
Yes, that is not a fun conversation to have. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and they were discussing about things to bring up on a first date, and in the back of my head, I was definitely thinking MS is not one of them for me. I think it's something, from my experience, that is good to bring up early on in the relationship, but not too early to where, and this is going to sound pretty bad, but where you scare them off. I did have one date where I went out for a drink with someone, and we had been seeing each other for about a month or two, and I finally told them that I had MS, and their reaction was to laugh, and it was the strangest reaction I've ever experienced. Needless to say, I do not speak to this person again or anymore, but I think finding the time to disclose it's challenging because it's very case-by-case basis, and you don't know how people are going to respond. So I found the best thing is just to get a feel. It's not something I feel personally comfortable disclosing on the first date, or maybe even on the third or the fourth date. But I do think it's a case-by-case basis, and I think it'd be easier if I had gone into this with not having to disclose necessarily, kind of like your guys' situation.
Right.
But it's definitely, doable. When I was first diagnosed, one of the thoughts that went through my head was, am I going to be able to find someone that wants me in a relationship with someone with MS, or, like you said, Andrew, someone that wants to have kids? Do I want to have kids now that I have this disease?
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have to consider all those things when you're dating too. And it's a challenge for sure, but there are much better people out there, and this whole laughing incident was very unique. So I'm hopeful for the future.
Yeah, that's
It's
tough.
just insensitive.
But,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, definitely.
But maybe some people react that way when they're uncomfortable. Maybe it's an uncomfortable laugh.
Yeah, maybe.
It could be, and you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it's not just telling somebody that you like watching football. It's definitely a new.
No, it's a very serious topic.
Yeah.
Right.
We probably had to work up to that when you bring it in the conversation. You had been thinking about it for a while, and then that's the reaction you get.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, right, it's like a case-by-case basis. And I think you have to, unless your MS is truly visible and, it's like you have to disclose, right, because it's very obvious, right? But if your MS is manageable, I think you shouldn't disclose that until you're ready, and until you get a good feel for that person and understand them and see who they are,
right.
and you get to know that person. And then once you know them and they know you, then at that point you can be like, hey, I also deal with this on a daily basis, right? And then, I don't know, and then you can see how real people are, right?
Right.
Like, then you can be like, hey, do you really like me? Do you really like me, or do you not?
Like Reese was saying, then maybe you kind of run the risk of, leading them on a little bit if they're like, oh, I really like you, and get into you a bit more, but then it's like, oh, I'm not ready to commit to that.
Yeah, that's the part that I struggle with, right?
Blurry line.
Is it leading them on? That's tough.
I don't know.
It's tough topic.
I don't think there's a right answer.
It's 2 years,
I
probably.
agree.
It's 2 years.
A few years and you got no symptoms. You're
2
doing
weeks.
great.
You're doing
You know what I mean?
Maybe.
You're doing great.
Yeah. 2 years.
So yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but
I agree.
well, we can move on. Let's see. We kind of touched on friends.
We did touch on
Do you guys want to chat a little bit more about that? I mean, I guess kind of like Andrew, you said, right? Like, the one thing with my friends that I feel like I have to remind them about is that there's certain nights that I just can't go out. I got some buddies from college, and they're like, hey man, let's go. Let's just go downtown. Let's do this.
Right.
And I'm like, yo, I can't do that anymore. I'm not about that life, right? And they're like, why? What's wrong? And I'm like, well, I have a mess, remember? And then they're just like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that, I find.
Well, and that goes all the way back to the invisible symptoms. It's so easy to forget if you're not living it every day, I guess. But yeah, just being sure you tell your friends when you can't do things. You can't overexert yourself. I mean, I physically cannot overexert myself,
Right.
or I will be toast.
Pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and I try not to bring it up a lot, right? Like, unless, I finally have to. Because they'll ask me, hey, you want to go out? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. And they're like, no, come on, let's go out. And I'm like, no, really, I'm all right.
Right.
And they're like, come on, man, let's go. Quit being lame. And I'm like, all right, I got a mess. Tonight's not going to work. I'm a little tired or something. And then that's when they're just like, oh, okay.
Well, it's not something you want to seek sympathy for necessarily,
Right,
Exactly.
I'm not trying to get that sympathy.
No.
So,
I'm good with that.
yeah. Same. Wow.
hard to bring up sometimes without feeling that way, like.
Right.
I wish you would just remember. Maybe that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's tough, right?
How
They
it
don't.
is, yeah.
They don't live it, and so I don't hold it against them, just because they don't deal with it every day. You know what I mean? They don't feel what I feel. They don't see what I have to go through, and so I really don't hold it against them, just because they see me and it looks like I'm doing fine.
Right.
And for the most part, I am, right? And that's great. I'd rather have them forget, actually, because then that means that I'm doing good and I'm managing it well, right? It's better to have people be like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot you had that.
You were fine last Friday night. Or whatever.
Yeah. You feel like you're doing great. I'm like, that's actually a compliment thing, you know what I mean? So, yeah, no, but it can be tough, for sure. So, let's move on.
So now we've got another poll. So for our viewers who have MS, how many of you have chosen to disclose at work? And again, we'll give you guys a minute to click some answers here. Okay. So far it's looking like, percentages are changing. So it looks like about 75-25 more people have chosen to disclose at work. Let's go ahead and hear how you guys have handled it.
I think all of us have semi-unique situations, very different from each other.
Yeah, right.
Because, Edward, you've disclosed, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so I got my job and I worked there for about a year, and then I disclosed to my direct managers. So that was kind of the direction I chose to go with it. I know that can be a really difficult thing, right? Like, I've heard some horror stories with it. And I've also heard some great stories, and it really depends on where you're working and who you're working for. But I've heard from people telling their bosses and then they end up getting let go for something, to people telling their company and they're great and they're supportive.
Right.
I went ahead and told my direct managers, and they were very supportive about it. I would say I'm blessed in that respect. Granted, it hasn't affected my performance at all. It hasn't affected any of my job duties, and so I think right now it's a pretty easy decision, right? They see that I'm doing fine and I'm doing good work, and everything's great.
Right.
If things start to get a little tougher, we'll have to see how they respond. But I know, I kind of looked at my company. I was like, hey, my company's, they're very supportive in these types of things. They care a lot for their employees, and so I felt safe doing that. I haven't disclosed to the entire company because I really feel like it's like a need-to-know basis. You know, like, you don't have to tell anyone.
Right.
Like, you're not required to. And a lot of times I don't want to tell any more people. Like, unless it comes up, like, I don't feel like people need to know. Because I think once you do that, some people might look at you different. It really depends on who it is.
And I think that's part of the reason why I have not chosen to disclose at work. And a lot of it, someone once told me, like, once you disclose these things, it's a bell you can't unring. So now these people have this information, and it could go, one of two ways. It could be great, and they're there to support you, or it could be something where they look at you slightly different, and they see you as somebody with MS. And I think that's part of the challenge, is you never really know what to expect. I think you can gauge it based on who you work with. And, down the road, I think maybe I will disclose, but for the time being, it hasn't affected my work performance in the least.
Right.
And so I don't really see a reason or a necessity to disclose. But it's not something I haven't thought about sometimes at length. But Andrew, you work for yourself, right? So you're in a different situation.
Yeah, when I was diagnosed, I worked for a pretty big corporation, but I kind of already complained about some of the symptoms to my direct bosses, and then once I got the news, it was just like, oh, what's going on, even at the doctor and stuff, so I just told them. And from then on, it's really complex decision based on, all these different variables, and it's different for everyone depending on all those the situation, but, I've always just kind of been like, this is me, this is who I am, it's part of the package, and I kind of made I don't even know the word to use, but kind of just told myself, like, I'm not going to try to really change how other people perceive me or anything like that. So that job basically, is just my two bosses that knew, and that's how it's been at most of the other jobs. And now I work for myself. I think all my clients know, but it doesn't really affect me at all. It doesn't impact my job, and it never has. So I think the reasons why you would disclose matter a lot too, because obviously if you're trying to hide something that's really hard to hide, that's maybe harder to do than just go on about your business. But I guess my attitude's always just maybe a little freewheeling and not thinking through all the different legal aspects of things and what the future could bring, because I disclose too much to certain people, but generally I don't, worry about it too much.
Yeah.
But that's just me personally, and I can see why a lot of people be in a totally different position.
Yeah, and I think like you said, right, like it's a personal decision. And for me, like, I didn't disclose, but then it was just like, after working there for a while, like, it was just kind of eating at me, and like I really wanted to,
Right.
Like,
interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Like, I do remember that. Now that I think about it,
I want them to know me.
Yeah. Well, it was just more of like I just want them to know, right? Like, if something happens,
You don't want to skirt around the issue.
Yeah, if I'm out for a week for something, like, I don't know, and I think we had a really good rapport, and like my team that I work with, like, they're all very caring, and so I think I wanted to just kind of like give them that heads up.
Right.
And for me, it was like, it was kind of eating at me, and then I ended up just being like, you know what, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it, and it worked out for me. So.
And you did it during a pretty opportune time after you had
I did after
your performance
my review.
series,
Yeah,
right?
so I timed it pretty well.
That's
so
smart. Maybe I should.
I had my review. It was funny story. So I'll tell it. I started working there, and new engineer out of college, and I hadn't disclosed or anything, and everything was fine. And I waited for my first review, and so at my first review, they're going in and they're giving me feedback, and it was all positive, right? And they're like, oh, you're doing great, we like you, you got a good future here, da-da-da-da. And then at the end of it, they're like, yeah, is there anything you want to talk about? And then that's when I kind of dropped it on them, right? So I waited until they had all great comments, and they're like, oh, all right, well, do you still love me now? And they were just like, yeah, that's fine, whatever you need. And so I feel super blessed to be working at my company. So, yeah.
Well, and I think I'm going to take your advice in my next performance review, maybe squeeze that in as long as I get positive feedback. But I'm curious what you think if I get negative feedback. I'm just kidding. That won't happen.
No. Don't get negative feedback.
I just won't get negative feedback.
That's my suggestion.
I'd be curious to know, for anyone that responded yes on the phone, if they ever had any similar experiences or if they had any negative reactions. That's kind of what I'm curious about.
Yeah, if you guys can, go ahead and comment.
I'm curious if there's any negative,
we'll get to it at the end.
or even positive, just any reactions.
Let's see, it's 6:41, so we should get moving.
But right before you guys move on, I just wanted to let everyone know the Rocky Mountain MS Center did do an issue of our magazine, our Informs magazine. In the summer of 2016, we did a whole issue on disclosure, kind of both sides of the story, and some of the legal ramifications. So be sure to check that out.
Awesome.
Cool. It's good to know. So let's touch on lifestyle.
My favorite topic.
So take it off.
Oh, I will take it off. So it's funny, when I was in college, before I was even diagnosed with MS, I was not active up until probably my sophomore year of college. I hated running. I hated cardio. I hated lifting weights. Like, you name it, I didn't do it. And then one day it all switched. I found friends that ran. I really started enjoying running. And so when I was diagnosed with MS, I had already been running and doing yoga for a while, so it kind of just accelerated my physical activity. And I don't know if I told you guys this, but when I was first diagnosed, I was told by somebody that I should not be running and I should not be doing distance running, and so
Because of the MS?
because of the MS. Well, this was a person that had a pretty extensive medical background, and so that kind of hit me personally, and so I signed up for a half marathon that next month because I didn't feel like that was sound advice, and I to this day use yoga and running to I would say control my disease. I think it helps me maintain the stress. I think that's a huge thing because stress hits me hard. That's like one of the biggest triggers for me. I know some people can't do like hot yoga because the heat triggers their symptoms, but for me, hot yoga is my zen. It is where I feel the best. And so I think the whole basis of exercise and even nutrition, I've ever since diagnosis, I've shifted my eating habits and have really tried to be mindful of what I'm putting into my body. So from my perspective, I think those are my two best weapons aside from the treatment I'm on and, not smoking and
I'm just curious, were you stressed when you were diagnosed? Because it sounded
very
like
stressed.
Edward
It was finals.
and I both were too. Yeah,
Very stressed.
Interesting.
Do you guys feel like you heat or stress or do you get affected by heat?
Not really.
Stress mostly?
Yeah, stress definitely. Definitely changed certain aspects of my lifestyle since I was diagnosed. I remember, I'll never forget, basically, Dr. Corboy said, or Kendra Yale, I forget, but one of them said that they were, he basically had like 5 things to focus on, and like don't smoke cigarettes, make sure you're getting enough sleep, vitamin D, keep your body weight as close to ideal as you can, and so I kind of just try to do those things, and stress too. But,
right.
Yeah, the exercise thing for me is big too, for the stress management.
But the heat doesn't get to me too much. I mean, I've done like bike MS the last few summers, and that's pretty hot out there, but I just trained for it, and
Did you do that last summer?
I did.
I did that last summer.
Nice.
I'll look for you next summer.
I
If you do it next summer.
I got rained out. Did you?
Yeah,
The hail
I
and the
did.
lightning. This summer
The last,
was
2
beautiful.
miles.
Yeah, exactly.
It was awful. My raincoat is not a raincoat, I discovered. It's a windbreaker.
But, yeah, I started riding my bike to and from work and things once I was diagnosed and really got into biking. But I was kind of like you were describing, like some activity, some things I like to do, but it wasn't like for my health really. And now it's much more top of mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm always good at doing it. But
Did you ever have any heat issues or no?
Have I ever? Well, yeah, when I had the double vision in 2011, before I was even diagnosed. Yeah, I hiked Half Dome out in Yosemite, and I was just the last few months of my nerves kind of healing. Now this is how I think about it, but coming down, I just was really tired and it was pretty hot. And I would notice my double vision, my vision would spread the hotter I got, so I'd have to cool down. But really, that's the only time I'm really done with heat was when that one symptom getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a little bit initially, but it all went away, so it was super weird.
So there is one question that I think would be fun to address right now. Someone said that her son is in college and loves to mountain bike. Any suggestions of ways to meet other people in the area that share his passion in the Denver area? And I'd say I have looked to meetup groups, and even through the MSYPN, I've found people who share the same passion in the Denver area. So I'd say if you are a young individual with MS that's looking for local mountain biking crews or running groups,
the Bike for MS.
Bike MS is a great one
There's
too.
a Facebook page for Bike MS.
Yes.
So he may be able to reach out there.
Bike MS is a great one.
That's road biking, but a lot of people there love the mountain bike.
Well, and some people use mountain bikes
on
the road bike.
Someone on my team had a crazy big mountain bike. They just don't race in it.
Right. Yeah. So what about sleep? Have you guys noticed differences in your sleep patterns? Because I notice a big difference when I get enough sleep and when I don't get enough sleep.
That I do notice.
Yeah.
but I don't have any trouble sleeping.
Okay.
But I do feel different when I don't sleep well.
Right.
Or don't
like
sleep
if you
long
don't
enough.
get like a good night's rest,
Absolutely.
your body definitely feels. I guess I don't know what it was. Feels worse the next day.
It feels like
struggles.
I feel like and Sarah Richter got to this in her expressions of MS that one year at the gala. Like you feel like you're walking through a water, like a pool. Like I just feel like I can't. I don't know if you feel that way. I feel slow.
Yeah, I've had. I would say like tired is definitely like I guess I get the fatigue if I don't sleep enough, and then I'll occasionally get some like tingling and twitching and muscle spasms if I don't sleep enough. So I definitely do see that when I don't sleep enough. And I've in college, like I didn't sleep a lot.
Right.
Like I was in engineering undergrad, so
Do you still
we
sleep
didn't
a lot?
sleep. No, I do. I get a lot more sleep now.
Okay.
I try to. But yeah, in undergrad, I think that was part of what led to my diagnosis was, it was during finals, tough curriculum, super stressed, super sick, not getting enough sleep, and that was just the norm, and so maybe that all just kind of affected me.
Right.
Eventually my body was just like, okay, and done.
We're going to focus to that.
So, let's touch on the alcohol thing real quick, because I think we're getting close to time. But has your guys' consumption of alcohol changed since you've had MS?
I drink less.
You drink less?
I drink less.
I drink less.
I'm more streaky.
Streaky? Sometimes you drink a lot.
Well, I did, right when I was diagnosed, I didn't drink for a while, and then I couldn't not drink beer, and then I tried to go gluten-free for a while, and I couldn't not drink beer.
Yeah, I guess, that's true. That's tough. Gluten isn't beer. Beer is good.
Yeah, so I don't think it's changed me that much. I wish I maybe had more willpower to make it change a little better.
Right.
But I'll go through streaks where like, I've been drinking a lot of beer lately. I should just not for a while.
Right.
Well, it's all moderation.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't feel like I will ever stop drinking alcohol 100% because of the MS. Because I feel like I enjoy a glass of wine, and I like going out to breweries with my friends, and I don't want my MS to inhibit these types of things either. But I do think it's, for myself, important to be cognizant of how much I'm putting into my body, and I don't know. I don't know what the research shows about alcohol affecting MS, but I'm sure it's probably not great. But, there could be some, in general, over alcohol.
I think even healthy people.
Overall.
Yeah, there's a balance. You can do everything perfectly and whatnot, and then, there's just a lot of uncertainty maybe. You want to live your life a certain way and take a little bit more of a chance for your own happiness, even if that shortens your life a little bit. Right. Like, just eating broccoli and water maybe isn't the best way to live life, even if that optimizes your chances of not having another exacerbation or something.
True. Yeah, and I think that's right.
Moderation.
I would agree with some balance, but I think it's a personal decision too. I definitely drink less. I'm on Baggio. I guess that's one thing we didn't talk about either. We didn't talk about what disease-modifying drug we're on. So I'm on a Baggio, like it's an oral tablet every day. So I've had good results with that. But one of the side effects with that is you can have like high liver enzymes, and so you have to get blood work done pretty regularly to make sure your liver is operating correctly. And I've had like high liver enzymes once, and granted it was like graduation after my MS diagnosis, so maybe I had one too many like margaritas right before graduation, but since then everything's been fine. So I do limit my alcohol consumption. I do notice if I drink a lot, I feel worse than I used to. Now maybe that's just because I'm getting older and hangovers are real, but I do limit it. So
I haven't heard anything about the drug I'm on Tisabri.
That's what I'm on.
I'm not sure about any interactions with alcohol. Did they say when?
Yeah, no. With me, it's like one of the known side effects. Because you can get like high liver enzymes, so you just got to be careful with alcohol consumption.
Okay.
I don't think.
So.
Just in the interest of time, we have another question regarding marijuana, and I know there's not really research on how marijuana works for patients with MS, but I'm curious if you guys are open to discussing very briefly, because I know we're close to time, if you've happened to use that for pain or symptom management.
Yeah, I haven't because I can't because of my employer, but
I have.
I don't know if you have.
I do. I like it. It helps a lot, and especially with muscle spasms or nerve pain or any kind of pain like CBD-based edibles. It can help a lot to just kind of calm things down and help with sleep to some degree as well.
I found that the topical ointment helps a lot with my neck spasticity, so I do think, these are anecdotal experiences, but I think there is some merit to, what we've experienced. The topicals, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I've heard good results with people that have MS that have used CBD and have used some sort of cannabis to kind of self-medicate. And I've heard some people have great results. I think some other people maybe not.
Yeah, you've got to really know yourself and your own body and kind of experiment a little, get your right dose, what, cannabinoids are going to help you. But being in Colorado, I've heard, tons of different stories from MS, other MS patients that benefit from, symptom management or even arthritis and all the other things you hear about. It's just the science is not there to make a lot of doctors and things feel comfortable with the dosing and the consistency of it. Yeah, so you got to be your own advocate to some degree when it comes to that.
Absolutely. I think we're on our last slide, which is fitting for the time. Should we?
So I'm just going to cut in real quick and remind folks, if you have questions, now is a good time to submit them. You guys have been answering questions as we've been going, so I'll let you just keep going the way you are. I just wanted to remind folks.
Sounds great. So how was your guys' experience the first time you had those new symptoms post-diagnosis?
You want to go or you want me to go?
Go for it.
Okay. So I would say the first time I kind of had some new symptoms pop up was actually last year. It was about the same time last year. I kind of caught a cold, and so I think my immune system was acting up a bit. But I was at work and kind of felt some new numbness on the left side of my face. And immediately, I freaked out. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? And I think I kind of, my heart rate went up, and I was kind of stressing out and kind of started getting anxiety about it. And I actually had to, take some time, pull myself out of work and be like, okay, I need to de-stress. I went and stretched a bit, saw if that kind of went away, and it didn't. And so I actually told my employer, I was like, hey, something, I got some stuff going on. Something's going on with my face. I'm not really sure what it is. This is new to me. I know it's new to you. It's new to both of us. But they were like, yeah, go ahead, take time off. You've got to take the day off or whatever you need. Figure it out. And I thought, I was like, oh, this will be okay. I'll just email my doctor. They'll prescribe me a shot of steroids, and it'll reduce the inflammation, right? And so, long story short, they ended up not wanting to do anything because it was just a minor symptom. And to me, it was really shocking because I thought, oh, any new symptoms, they're just going to, give me a shot of steroids, give me a treatment of steroids, and nip it, right, and just stop it.
Yeah.
But I actually found out they were like, well, we like to use those treatments when something really serious comes up, when you're really inhibited.
Right.
Is this
kind of like
affecting?
A last resort.
Yeah, is this affecting your vision? Is it affecting your motor function? Is it affecting your memory? Well, if it's not doing any of that, then
we're not TV.
Yeah, right. Then they're like, oh, there's not much we want to do right now.
Right.
And so I thought it was super interesting. I didn't think that's how it was going to be, but that's kind of what I ran into.
It's funny because the first symptom that I had, and I think I've told you this before, was optic neuritis. So it's when the optic nerve gets inflamed, and typically for that symptom, they do give you steroids. And in this case, I didn't even think to go in and get steroids, so I just waited it out for about 5 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
it was a
long time.
Pretty sure that's what I had in 2011
You had optic neuritis.
Right, and went and saw this neuro-ophthalmologist, but I didn't have insurance at the time, so that's when he's like, oh, I see what's going on, but you're young, it'll heal itself over time. But it took months.
Right, it takes a long time, and you have
and
a gray
comes
scale.
Back a little, goes away.
Did yours come back when you overheated?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's what I was getting at earlier when I was doing that hike. As I heat up, I could just see my vision separating into double vision. that was at the SIP. How did your vision look?
I didn't have double vision, but the vision in my, I believe it was my left eye, I actually just had an appointment and they did a optic test and they can't even tell which eye it's in, which is great. But they, so I don't even remember. I think it was my left eye would get grayscaled and then everything was blurry. So there was a really good picture I found online. I'll have to show you guys, but it compares normal vision to optic, and everyone's experience is different. But I think that was one of the most
disturbing. Mine might have been a different
disturbing
nerve too. I think he said it was like the 6th cranial nerve on one eye or something different.
Right.
From the optic nerve.
Huh. Well, that's good to know. Have you guys, so one of our questions really quickly is, have you ever struggled with cognitive so CogFOG? Like, have you ever, do you feel like your thought processes are a little slowed down, and how do you handle it?
One time, and I was kind of starting a new job, and it was really scary. And I didn't know if it was because of stress. That's one of the things with MS. There's all these possible things that could cause you to be slow or whatever. So it was scary. I just didn't know what was going on, but my brains were not normal feeling. And so I just had to kind of like try to de-stress first. And then it was scary. It was one of the scarier symptoms, actually, because that's kind of a huge part of my identity and stuff. Is my
Right, yeah.
brain, just like most
I mean, it
people.
is your identity.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I experience it on a very low-lying basis sometimes, especially when I get stressed. But I found that, once again, my shameless plug for running has helped. It gives me, not even just like for the MS, but it's a de-stressor. I don't know, Edward, have you ever had that?
I haven't had CogFOG, not that I know of. So, I mean, for the most part, mentally, I think that's what I've felt is I've been luckiest with, is that I haven't had any, like, mental issues.
That's great.
You know, because it's like, well, if I lose my body or parts of my body, that's one thing, but if you lose your mind, that's another thing, right? I would say it's more difficult, it really is, but I think I've gotten lucky in that sense. But yeah.
Awesome.
So, is there anything that, I guess, besides running or stress that kind of affects that, you think?
I think it's stress that kind of really induces it, and it's really not like Andrew was describing, something that's super inhibitory, but it does sometimes. I have to write things down because I can't focus. But I found that just sometimes even stepping away from what I'm doing and concentrating on something less, mind draining is helpful.
Sleep, like, affects that? Do you ever wake up, like, if you don't get enough sleep, you find that you have issues with that or anything?
No, mainly just the stress is really what.
Yeah, stress is a killer.
Don't be stressed. That's our takeaway message.
Zen, meditate.
Zen.
I would say, honestly, that's the big thing, is learning how to kind of meditate and control your emotions and control the stress, right? Because the only thing you can control is yourself. You can't really control your environment. So if you can learn how to control your own emotions to the environment, then you can. I think that's honestly helped me the most.
Yeah.
Is learning how to control that, and that's definitely made me stress less.
Absolutely.
So second that.
When your mind starts wandering towards all these different possible outcomes and things, bring it back to here and now. Yeah.
Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions.
Right at 7 o'clock.
Right at 7 o'clock. This is great.
I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today. I've got a couple of plugs. For more information about MSYPN, if you're not connected yet, check out mscenter.org/MSYPN or search MSYPN on Facebook, and you will find our Facebook group. One thing we've got coming up next week, actually Tuesday afternoon, December 18th, we're doing a tour of the clinic and the research facilities out at CU Anschutz. If you're interested in joining us for that, please send an email to msypn@mscenter.org. That will put you in touch with Sarah, who manages the MSYPN program here in our offices, and she can get you hooked up on that tour, which is going to be a pretty unique opportunity for us.
Yep, thank you guys. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you guys for being part of this kind of new type of webinar that we have going on. So,
of course.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, that's great. So.
All right, thanks everybody.